Session 444, Chapter 3, Verse 117.
مثل ما ينفقون في هذه الحياة الدنيا كمثل ريح فيها صر أصابت حرث قوم ظلموا أنفسهم فأهلكته وما ظلمهم الله ولكن أنفسهم يظلمون.
The example of what they spend in this worldly life is that of a biting wind accompanied by frost that smites the harvest of a people who wrong themselves and devastates it. God has never wronged them, but they wrong themselves. Chapter 3, verse 117. Allah describes the actions of the disbelievers in this world as useless, regardless of how good they may appear. Why? Because denying God or ascribing partners to Him nullifies all deeds. It is treason at the summit. Allah paints a picture to help us understand. It starts with strong hurricane-like wind, like the wind that struck the people of Ad. God says, Ad were destroyed by a savage, howling wind. Chapter 69, verse 6. This type of wind carries with it bitter cold and loud noise. In other words, it spreads fear and destruction, and, as you know, wind makes cold temperatures much worse. God continues, a biting wind accompanied by frost that smites the harvest of a people who wrong themselves and devastates it. When you hear the word harvest, you immediately imagine crops and healthy food that help us sustain life. The word harvest is translated from the Arabic origin harith, the same term used for plowing the land. Allah reminds us that He is the one who does the actual work. You and I only till the land, drop the seed, water, and wait. He says, consider the seeds you sow in the ground. Is it you who make it germinate, or are we the germinator? If we wished, we could have made it broken stubble. You would then be left devoid of crops, distraught. Chapter 56, verses 63 through 66. God presents an example of a group of non-believers who spend their money for a great cause, such as growing crops to feed people. Yet even such a fine deed does not benefit them. He says, a biting wind accompanied with frost that smites the harvest of a people who wrong themselves and devastates it. God has never wronged them, but they wrong themselves. Such are the consequences of living life without the foundation of faith. Allah brought this verse after He made it clear in the previous one that the wealth and children of the disbelievers will not avail them on the day of judgment. Why? Because He wants to dispel any suspicion you may have that the wealth spent by the disbelievers, even for a noble cause, will earn them a reward with God. We had mentioned before that you earn your pay from the one you work for. We ask, when the disbelievers spend money on good causes such as feeding the poor and healing the sick, was gratitude for the Lord's blessings on their mind? Or did they spend to help humanity and gain status? No doubt it was the latter, because they have no faith in anything beyond worldly life. They do not believe in the existence of a God or a day in which they will be held accountable. Thus, they will earn their reward here on earth through social recognition and nothing in the hereafter. Isn't that fair? God says, the example of what they spend in this worldly life is that of a biting wind accompanied with frost that smites the harvest of a people who wrong themselves and devastates it. God has never wronged them, but they wrong themselves. Chapter 3, verse 117. In fact, the Quran is full of such examples to help us understand our faith. Allah gives examples from the tangible material world to help us appreciate the intangible events of the hereafter. He says, God brought you forth from the wombs of your mothers when you knew nothing, and endowed you with hearing, eyes, and hearts, so that you may give thanks. Chapter 16, verse 78. We know that when an infant starts to perceive his or her surroundings, the first sense that matures is hearing. An infant who is an hour or two old gets startled by noise, even if he or she cannot see much yet. As the child explores the physical world more, he or she will see fire, touch it, and learn that it burns. He or she will eat honey, find it sweet, and realize that sweet things taste good. All perceptions are initially generated from the physical world and learned through the 5 apparent senses, which are sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. God blessed us with many additional abilities to help us perceive the world. For example, suppose 2 bags of the same size and shape are placed in front of you. Can you tell through your 5 senses which one is heavier? No, you cannot. However, if you carry a bag in each arm, it will be easy. Through which sense did you perceive the relative weight of the bags? It is through muscle tone, as the muscle fibers in one arm strain slightly more to carry the heavier bag. In another example, you enter a shop to buy some clothes. The seller puts 2 shirts in front of you, and as soon as you rub the fabric of the shirts between your index finger and thumb, you realize that one is thicker than the other. Through which sense did you perceive this fraction of a millimeter difference? Again, you cannot perceive this by sight or touch. It was through the spatial distance between your fingers. Allah puts these means of perception at your disposal. He says, God brought you forth from the wombs of your mothers when you knew nothing, and endowed you with hearing, eyes, and hearts so that you may give thanks. Chapter 16, verse 78. Take note that God mentioned hearing and sight, which help us explore the tangible world, before he mentioned the heart, which is concerned with intangible emotions and deeper meanings. Thus, when Allah wants to give you an example for an intangible matter, he brings a tangible one which the senses agree on. He says, the example of what they spend in this worldly life is that of a biting wind accompanied with frost that smites the harvest of a people who wrong themselves and devastates it. We use the same method in our daily lives. When a student does not understand the concept of electrical current, the teacher says, let me give you an analogy from something you know. Think about electricity as water flowing through a hose. Voltage is the pressure that pushes the water through the hose, while the current is the diameter of the hose. The wider it is, the more water will flow through.
The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, convey my teachings to the people, even if it is only a single verse. Please take a moment to subscribe and to share with your family and friends. Visit us at www.qurangarden.com.